Sheridan, one of the reasons why you asked me to get involved in this is because it's really important to me that that we don't forget about where our food comes from, and that there's respect for ingredients. So I'm really pleased that we've got farmers going to be joining us too, so we can hear what it's like to be a farmer and a producer.
Yes.
And I want them to know that as somebody in the city, that I really value what they're doing. The quality of the ingredients and the expertise of our farmers in this country is second to none. And we've got to look after our farmers and producers so that we can have beautiful food like this to eat and enjoy.
That's right. Well, I guess what we really need to do is ask Whisper, who's at our headquarters, in the technical headquarters, who we've got online, because I know some people have had some technical issues.
Andrew is here. We also have Tanya from My Kitchen Stories, and we have Andrew from Murray River Organics. So let me just have them unmute. Do we have Sam? We have Sam here too. Sam Livingstone from Ag Chat Oz.
Excellent.
So let's. So what I'll be doing now is changing it to where whoever is speaking, that's who will be on the main screen.
Okay, all right. So thank you for joining us, and I certainly know Quentin and Rob from Kialla were having dropout problems with their internet access. Perhaps Matt, Matt the dairy farmer from Australian Organic Dairy Farmers, he may well have had the same issues. I know people in the rural areas have their wireless broadband internet connections. It's sometimes not the most reliable. So we'll just see how we run with this. Sam, I guess, is joining us from Canberra. Tanya's joining us from Sydney. And Andrew, I'm not sure where Andrew is, whether he's out on the farm or whether he's in Melbourne, or anyway, he can tell us when he's in. So basically, Tanya Cusack from My Kitchen Stories is a blogger who's based in Sydney. And she loves baking, and she's also a great supporter of artisan producers and sustainable produce. She's very interested in ethical food practices. So that's one of the reasons why we asked Tanya to join us today, because she really gets behind these kinds of things, and her blog, she loves to talk about place, she loves to travel, she loves to go visiting places, and of course tasting food as she goes. So welcome, Tanya.
Hi, Tanya.
And we have Sam Livingstone from Ag Chat Oz. And Ag Chat Oz is an online community designed to connect people in the country and people in the city. And really, it's about the fact that, there's often a lot of disconnect in Australia between country and city. I grew up in the country, and I
grew up in the city.
Yeah, right. Speaking from my own experience, I can say that, as a country girl, the city seemed such a long way from me, and I felt very disconnected with people in the city. And I think it's partly the great distances that we have in this country, that our farms, the farms themselves are a long way apart, and often we're a long way from the closest town. And then the city itself is another thing altogether, and they can seem like quite different cultures, actually. So Sam's whole mission is to bring together and to cross that divide, which we think is fantastic. And he's also interested in sustainable farming practices and the future of farming and the future of food. So welcome, Sam.
Cheers, thank you.
And we also have, we've got Andrew, and Andrew is from Murray River Organics. And Murray River Organics produce the most beautiful dried fruit. We use the Murray River Organic sultanas in our, and other dried fruit from Murray River Organics in our muesli, in the Kialla muesli. And I have to say that when I first tasted the Murray River Organic sultanas, I was smitten. Yeah. They have this really beautiful caramel flavour, and you can taste the fact that they haven't been dried in any sort of nasty chemical kind of way. They've still got this really rich depth flavour. So welcome, Andrew. We're really happy to have you here as well.
Yeah, hello, Andrew.
And so perhaps we should start out by, because we've just finished the baking, perhaps we should start out by having a chat to Tanya about baking stuff. So were you following along with us there, Tanya?
Tanya, hope you can. Be kind.
Yes, would you like to make some comments about baking?
Can you hear me? Excellent. Yes, I was following along. Very exciting. I don't have much to say about baking except I love it and I do it constantly. The better ingredients you use, the better your baking will be, obviously. The better eggs you use, the more amazing it will taste. And we like to have happy chickens and happy eggs. And of course flour is extremely important. The protein in the flour and the way that the flour is milled is very important as well.
And it's a bit of a shame that we've lost our wheat farmer and our miller in the internet. Juggling, speak from my limited knowledge, of the whole process. But one of the things that we do at Kialla that we really make sure is that we don't over-process stuff, because I think one of the big issues, that some food needs processing. Obviously, the minimal amount of processing we can have in our food stuff's better. We need to process our grains to become free and to turn into flour. And we just make sure that we don't overheat the flour when we mill it, and that we use the whole grain, and that we just minimise, when we're producing white flour, we minimise the amount of the whole wheat grain that is removed, because one of the big things that happens with white flour generally is that it goes through this process where often a lot of the content is taken away and turned into other products. For example, semolina can be a byproduct of flour, whereas we make sure that we leave that in the flour so it still maintains its nutritional taste. Yeah, so that's sort of one of the things. And Tanya, you obviously have had some flour experiences that you can relate to, perhaps when things, people seem to notice when with different types of flour. I've often had people comment to me, I notice when a flour isn't as good as another flour.
Yeah, well, I know too, Tanya, you might find, but if you bake a lot, to me, flour is like wine. It depends on the reason it's grown in, the time of year, the season, so on. You flour, obviously, I'm imagining that the farmers and the millers are looking for a sort of consistent product, but they blend and source their grains from different parts of the country. And even if you've baked in other countries, and you're baking in other countries, you'll notice that the flour is different, and that can affect how it does affect something. And so sometimes even in my baking days, often feel quite crushed when they're baking. Things don't turn out. They might find overseas, which causes different amounts of liquid and so on, because their flour is prepared differently.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. I was not aware of that. Someone who doesn't know too much about the chemistry of baking, I wasn't aware of that. And what can you say about that, Tanya? Do you notice? You mentioned ingredients. You mentioned the quality of your eggs. Do you notice if you don't use organic eggs? Do you notice a difference in your result?
Well, yes, you do, and different flours, as Gillian was saying, have different hydration levels as well. So the more the better the egg, the better the albumin, the white, and that makes a really big difference to how things rise as well. Because if you beat eggs and they've got an amazing white, and they're very fresh, it gives you quite a different result to a really stale or old or factory farmed egg. Completely different.
Yeah. Colour difference, you notice. I really notice the difference in eggs in baking. And some are, especially when I'm using eggs for like making curds and fillings, difference it makes in the quality, the colour, and the richness. Beautiful. I really do notice that it has impact a lot.
Where do you source your eggs, Tanya?
Well, I worked at a company that, and we brought Kangaroo Island eggs from South Australia.
Oh, I know Kangaroo.
And I love those, and I used to represent them for the company, and I love those. But other than that, I buy some eggs from Feather and Bone, Farmer Joe's. They're amazing as well. But yeah, so I just try to find free range and organic, and look, I just try to buy them whenever I can. You know, you can't always find exactly what you want, but if you at least try to shop with some kind of ethics in mind to help you, then you can, you can support farmers.
That's a very important point, because to me, the more I support farmers buying their produce, then they're more able to continue doing what they do. And also, there's also farmers and they support too.
Exactly, and that's interesting too, because one of the things recently has come up is a discussion around. Well, one of the things that we're interested in talking about is the whole future of food and where it's going, and there's some ideas out there that in fact what we need to be doing with agriculture in Australia is getting larger farms, and the so-called Ma and Pa family farm is on the way out, and it's been scaled up and changed, and foreign consortiums might come in and buy it up and change the practice. And, one of the things I think, and perhaps this is something, Andrew, that we could address to you, because I know that your family's been farming the Murray River organic region. Well, you have been organic Murray River since the 1970s, and that yours is a family enterprise to some degree. Perhaps you'd like to fill us in on how you've dealt with some issues that I think a lot of farmers in Australia have to confront, which is the idea that people demand cheaper food, and as a consequence, pressure is placed on farmers to, for the economics of scale, to produce more food at less money, and whatever then has to occur. For example, I know that's the problem with conventional dairy farmers, and we were going to have Matt from Australian Organic Dairy Farmers, who's going to be with us here today. As I said, we've probably got some internet problems. But there's a big issue in Australia for dairy farmers, and the challenge for conventional dairy farmers just to survive, because of the cost of milk. The fact that you can go to Coles and buy a litre of milk for less than you can buy a litre of water is truly ridiculous. If you think about the value that is in a litre of milk, and often a litre of water is, you don't even know they've filled it up in a tap somewhere, you don't know. So, Andrew, would you like to comment a little bit on how your family farm has developed over the last 30, 40 years?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Whisper.
Hi, yeah, Andrew just, he was in here and he just dropped out, so he's also having an internet connection.
All right, no problem.
Well, perhaps we can direct that question a little bit.
We have Sam. Sam's available.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That maybe, Sam, you might like to talk a little bit about, because you're probably in touch with some of these issues that Australian farmers are facing.
Oh, here's Andrew. Sorry, here he is.
I'll put it back. Great.
Did Andrew hear my question?
Okay, we'll go to Sam. Sam?
Okay, Sam.
G'day, guys.
Hi, Sam.
Hello.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question. It's hard to. I mean, really, the supermarkets are justifying the price decrease for milk to say that they want to make things cheaper for everyone. But as you say, you can buy a litre of milk cheaper than you can actually buy a litre of water. Like, that's unbelievable. So the pressures that some of these farmers, not only dairy farmers, but a whole heap of farmers are facing are quite big. And we've had a few chats recently about the cost of production. And the cost of production seems to keep rising, but the cost at the farm gate and what the farmers get doesn't seem to be moving. So there's a bit of a difference there, and you want to keep buying quality and safe Australian food, but people don't seem to want to be able to, I suppose, pay for it. So there's a bit of a juggling act, I think, that needs to happen there.
That's right. And it's that, for me, it's that sort of connect and that understanding the value of that. I mean, at what point does the farmer say, no, it's too hard, I'm not going to do this anymore? Or their children see the struggle and say, well, it's not for me.
Well, that's right.
And where will we be?
Well, that's right. And I think the median age of Australian farmers is something like 55 years old, which, you know, in the general workplace, that's 10 years off retiring. So, you know, in 10 years' time, are we going to have a big issue in Australia?
Yes.
Around who's sustaining the farmers. And we want farmers doing something, doing what they love. You know, we don't want giant multinational corporations farming for us and growing our food, and then we have Monsanto, so we don't need to go there. So, you know, we really want real people to be growing our food. And I think that, you know, we've got to let go of this idea that our food has to get cheaper and cheaper. In fact, we need to understand that our food is one of the most valuable things. Purchasing good quality food is integral to our health.
Yes.
And it's one of the major, you know, it's one of the things that I feel really strongly about. You know, we should prioritise it. And if we did, then we'd be able to support, you know, and I know it sounds quite romantic, but I think we could support better farming practices. We developed an attitude where we prioritised the quality of food. So if anyone would like to comment on that.
I think in Australia that unfortunately that supermarkets, and we only really have two, are in control of what our consumers feel that they should pay for food. The average consumer just doesn't really have a clue about farming or about anything to do with any of the issues we're talking about. They are just constantly shown that, you know, Coles is cheaper or Woolworths is cheaper, and that's how they measure their food. And we, as a country, have a problem with that. If you go to countries like Italy, most people still buy from family cooperatives and small farms and that sort of thing. And you know, families still farm the same land as they have for generations, and we just don't have access to that kind of mentality. You know, we've got a supermarket mentality.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Actually, it is very focused on a cost basis, and we kind of nearly take for granted that the quality and you know, the safety of our food will be there. But we're driven so much by cost because you know, you see these things that down, you know, from Coles or Woolworths prices are cheaper or whatever, and then it's interesting. You go to somewhere like a farmer's market, and a few people I think are put off by a farmer's market because they see the actual cost, I suppose, and they go, oh, okay, I'm not going to pay $4 a kilo for apples because I know I can go to the supermarket and get them for $2.99 or whatever. So cost is just such a massive thing, and we really need to get our mindset out of that and onto quality and safety, because that's what we really excel at.
We also need to get our mindset off the quantity that we buy and we use, and that changes that. You know, like, we don't all need to buy massive amounts of meat or anything else like that. We just need to buy enough to sustain us, or have it a couple of times a week and buy really good quality.
Yes. the whole thing of food wastage is another discussion point. And certainly, I just feel too that when people have a great connection with their food, there's less chance that they'll be wasteful. I always say to Sheridan about the milk that I get that comes from Jersey cows, and I know the family that are the dairy farmers, and they're getting up very early and they're tending that herd, and that milk is coming to me. It's the most beautiful, nutritious milk. I couldn't bear to think that I would waste that milk because of what's gone in to bring that to me.
I think that's very important. That you actually pay for something. It's not cheap as chips. And I mean, I never ever buy the $2 milk ever. I refuse to buy that kind of thing because somebody is losing out, and it's all of us. It's all of us that are losing out in those deals.
In the long run, it certainly will be all of us. As you say, the farmers are getting older, and if people can't see a future in farming, in dairy farming, or any kind of farming, I suppose, there won't be an industry. So we really need to keep that. And not to be too alarmist about it, but that's an issue. So we just need to, I suppose, be a bit more focused on that quality side of things, so we can really get the best quality for what we pay for.
Yes. So, Sam, you do the Murray River fruits?
No, I'm the Ag Chattels.
That's Andrew, yeah. I mean, places like Angus Park in South Australia are owned by Bright Foods Chinese company now and things like that. So, yes, the less we think about it, the more other countries think about it and start buying our companies.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the issue of overseas ownership is very overplayed. When you look at the statistics, I think it's about 99 or at least 95% of farms in Australia, farmland, is still Australian owned. So I don't think that's as much of an issue as keeping people on the farm and paying a fair price for a fair quality. So that, to me, is the real thing. And as I think someone mentioned before, it's building that connection with not only the farmer, but with your food as well. And I know from myself that I really like to do that and go to a farmer's market or actually go to a farm and buy the milk and have a chat. You can go into, say, Woolworths and have a chat with a 20-year-old kid, but he's never seen a cow before, so it's not going to be much use to you.
No. It's good to know that you say 95% of farms are still Australian owned. I love that. That's good.
Yeah, it is quite high. It's around that 90-95% mark. So, yeah, look, as I said, it's not that much of an issue. Other things are more of an issue, I think.
Oh, excellent.
How do we build that connection there? Being a city-born and bred person myself, but how do you, through Oz, can you build those connections between in the country and people in the city and build those connections around food?
Yeah, I mean, I really encourage a lot of anyone that's interested in their food. So really, I think the message is, if you eat, you're part of the agricultural system, you're part of that supply chain, so you're involved in ag, whether you like it or not. So get involved, get on Twitter, get on Facebook, whatever, and start talking about your food. And you can join in Ag Chattels, and we talk about a whole heap of different issues to do with Australian agriculture. And please people feel welcome to come in there and ask a question. We run the chats on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock, but any other time you can ask a question. It might be something as simple as, what's the difference between free-range eggs and a barn-laid egg? And we've got farmers on there that are not chicken farmers, but also egg farmers as well, and they can answer your question straight away. And it's part of that thing of building up and actually, I suppose, a bit of brand awareness as well, that that for instance, the Tilba milk that I buy comes from Tilba in New South Wales instead of somewhere else in wherever, you know. So it's a lot of that, and it's a lot of, I suppose, people in the city need to be connected as well. They need to actually open up and say, look, tell me about this stuff. It's no use if people from the country keep talking, but no one's listening. That turns anyone off, you know.
Yeah.
I think there is a growing awareness, and people are starting to. But sometimes for people, I certainly know baking, they've lost that connection so much, perhaps over a generation, that they've almost lost complete touch. How does one sort of start to build those connections? And you know, some of that's through some of the movement about actually sort of doing gardening and growing some of your own produce, and sort of getting that sense of growing things and taking care of producing food for ourselves, even if it's on a small scale.
For sure, that's part of it.
Growing in the city.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that perhaps if we go back a generation or two, where families, even city families, were growing a lot more fruit trees and fruit and vegetables in farms. So you got completely away from that. And perhaps people, people say, well, I'm too busy to do that. But it's something that's really important, and it might be one of those things where we're going to regret that we're too busy to pay attention.
I just had a question that's come in here, Gillian. That's just still a baking question. And we have Deborah. She did ask this a while ago, so we have to apologise.
Sorry, Deborah.
And it was about oil, substituting oil for butter.
Yes.
So what sort of quantity?
Well, it really, and Tony, please you jump into your baking experience. Jump in here, but you can substitute. I mean, it makes for a different flavour and slightly different texture. It's different in product, but you can substitute. I mean, really, when you sort of look at if you melted your butter, but it can depend on what you're making. You might not use as much. What do you do, Tanya? Do you?
Well, everybody's baking a lot with coconut oil now. That seems to be the most acceptable substitute at the moment, and you generally do it about 1-for-1 with coconut oil. So I don't know what the person that was asking the question was using, if they were using oil or coconut oil or...
I suspect it was coconut oil, yes.
Okay, yeah. And you can, depending on the oil and depending on the recipe, I find, with this, I would do a 1-for-1, this particular, for that really moist, and keeping that on fruit cake. And there's some fruits in that, and the cocoa powder and that will also, they're sort of dry, so but I quite often sometimes do half butter and half oil, because I really like the flavour too of butter. I love butter, but sometimes if I'm wanting some of the quality of oil can give in terms of moistness and the keeping qualities, I'll use a combination.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question, Deborah.
I'm just saying. I think that I'm just seeing if we have any more questions or comments.
Okay, just checking your posts and your questions.
We do have Andrew back on the line.
Hi, Andrew.
Excellent, Andrew. So the question I directed to you before was, I was interested to see that your family has been farming that area in the Murray River since the 1970s, and obviously your operation's been scaled up. And we were talking about, how farming in Australia, with the economics of scale and everything, with the pressure on people to keep prices low for food, how people are having to scale up to get a reasonable sized business happening. And interesting to hear from you, because as I understand it, Murray River Organics is still essentially a family operation. generation, or I think you've probably structured it a bit differently now. And you certainly, it was your father who started farming the area, and I believe your brother might also be involved as well. Perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit about how you've dealt with these challenges that Australian farmers face, and why, in fact, you moved to organic farming.
Andrew?
Maybe he's muted.
Andrew, can you unmute? You just hover your mouse towards the top of the screen and unclick the mute button.
How do you remember who takes
He's chatting with me here. He's chatting here with me online through the Hangout space, but for some reason we're not picking up his audio.
Right. Okay, well perhaps we'll move on to another question while we wait for Andrew to solve that one. So I understand too that Quentin has now joined us.
Quentin, yeah, that's correct.
Rob?
Can you hear us, Quentin? Hello, Quentin?
Speak up, Quentin.
One of the challenges, obviously, that we face when we do something like this, where we're trying to connect with people in the country, is that unfortunately the internet isn't as great in the country as what it is, you know, for us in the middle of Brisbane. So that is an unfortunate truth. And meanwhile,
yeah, we are getting the live feed of Quentin and Rob, so we can see them. The viewers can see them. It sounds like Rob can hear us.
Yes.
Can you hear us, Rob? Yes. So they can hear us. We can see them, but we just can't hear them. So it looks like Quentin's working on something.
Okay. All right. So perhaps we'll go back to our discussion. One of the things. I stepped out of that discussion then. So, Gillian, would you like to pick it up where we left off? Particularly our tech side of things.
Got to what we were talking about.
Tanya, Sam, would you like to perhaps start a thread for us? Is there something, or if anyone would like to tweet something?
I would like to, I don't know if anybody would like to know why you use apple sauce in your cake, but it's a thing that I love to do as well, and something that helps your cake stay fresher for longer, and it helps the keeping qualities. Do you use a lot of apple sauce or in your cakes, Gillian?
Yeah, I do. I find it a really good ingredient. I mean, you rarely sort of see it, Tanya. I don't know if you find that in cookery books. I don't see it.
No, mainly only in American baking you see it. But it's a fantastic way to add moisture to baking without adding liquid.
That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah. And I just find it, it can add a little bit of sweetness, but certainly that moisture, and that's the main reason I use it, that moisture and the keeping qualities. Especially, again, I try to bake very much seasonally, so I take advantage of produce when it's at its very best and buy up lots of apples and sort of make them into a sauce or something like that. And of course, you can use an apple sauce
or quite often I find if I can't find any decent cooking apples, I'll buy one of those very large tins of sliced apples, and I put them in my Vitamix and I blitz them up, and and I keep that in containers in the freezer or wherever, and or I just do it as I need it, and that works very well too.
Yes, yeah. Lots of apple sauce and baking a cake with a dog. It really does add. I find it really does add to a cake. So I always make my my fruitcakes with apple sauce in them. And I say, depending on how loose the batter is, and you might want to loosen it up a bit, you know, as it might be a little bit dry, it's great to use apple sauce for that rather than adding a liquid, which, you know, changes the nature of the cake.
I do like to use as much. I like to use an organic ground cornmeal if I can, or corn flour. I like to bake with that as well. Quite often with organic flours, because they haven't been treated as with so much heat and so much processing, they have a flavour that's it's kind of more wheaty in a way, or fresher than flours. So yeah, and sometimes a bit more buttery too. It's not that sort of really dry, cakey type of flour. Yeah. So that's nice to use also. And how do you find the difference for you in baking with those kind of flours? Do you find them a little bit more buttery, or you know, like they're kind of stickier or something, aren't they?
They're certainly, yeah. They're certainly, you know, even if you smell the flour.
Yes.
Often flour that's been processed a lot is almost nothing. It's just like, you know, it's just like dust. I'm allowed to say that. But yes, it certainly has more flavour. I can smell it more. And I say, just with baking, I find that it's like when you're working with any produce at different times of the year or whatever, if you're using flour that's not being over-processed, you really can enjoy the quality of the year. And that's one of the lovely things about baking, you know, getting really close to the ingredients. I really enjoy that. And so you can actually sort of choose ingredients and certain types of flours, depending on what sort of quality you like, you know, finished in your cake or your bake. So one of the things that people often ask about, I know, is just even some of those unusually used cornmeal or corn flour. In terms of corn flours, you know, now we're seeing shops corn flour, and then we're seeing some that are made with corn flour. People get confused about that. The produce in shops often is corn flour.
Yes.
And yet when they might read on the box, it will say wheaten corn flour.
Oh, yes.
And so there's you know, there's a confusion about it. This corn flour is corn. Why is it called wheaten flour?
But I mean, when I'm talking about corn flour, I'm actually talking about proper flour, like ground polenta, so made from corn. You do have to be very careful in the supermarket. You will get very white, that really white powdery flour that's called corn flour, that's for thickening, which is a little bit different to a ground corn flour, an actual polenta flour.
That's it.
Quite different.
Yes. And actually, when I was growing up, my understanding was that was corn flour, that white stuff that you're talking about, that has a really curious consistency.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know, it seems so right. Yeah. And is it actually made from corn, like a maize?
You can get maize flour. There is one that is actual maize, but you have to be very careful. A lot of them are wheaten, and so they're not actually corn derivatives at all.
I know we do have corn flour. I was curious to know if that funny white flour that was called corn flour that I grew up with had any resemblance to corn. If anyone knows the answer to that, whether there's any corn in it at all, or whether it simply was called corn flour.
Some of it doesn't. Yeah, some of it.
Sorry?
No, you're correct. Some of it doesn't.
Yeah.
actual corn in it. And I think I might need to find out what is actually in it. I actually don't buy it because if I want a wheaten-based flour, then that's what I'll buy. If I'm buying corn flour, I'm normally buying it for an icing, and I don't really want a wheaten-based one. So.
Is Whisper, do we have Andrew or Quentin actually, can we hear them yet?
Yes, we have Quentin, who's available. We'll want to give it a shot, Quentin?
We were to draw the winners of the hamper and the Media Junkie Prize. Now, today, however, there's a small glitch.
Okay.
And that is that we have not printed out the numbers and chopped them up.
All right. So we put it in.
Oh, yes, that's my fault.
Oh, no, we don't need to make it that it's your fault. You had lots of things to do today. And so, you know,
we can do
but
that.
I'm just wondering how we can do this, whether I know that we've got 90-odd people.
Well, what can we draw it after the event and you post it on the blog?
I guess we have to.
We
We wanted to
blog?
make it legitimate so that you could see that we're doing it.
We're honest.
So that you,
I'm honest. I'll make sure.
so you can see we're really
Make
doing it.
sure
You know,
it's
like
on.
you watch the lotto and
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. What about this? You know, we can tally up the total amount of registrants that we had and then ask one of our online guests to pick a number between 1 and that number, and that would be the winner.
That sounds like a good idea. If anyone would like to protest that method, please look out for any response to that. But I think that sounds like an excellent idea because neither Tanya or Sam or Andrew, if they're still with us, have any, you know, I presume that you don't know what number any specific guest has when they enter the event. No? So, how does that sit with everyone? We've got 2 prizes to give away.
No, that's fine.
Yep. Okay, we've got the Kialla hamper and we've got the Media Junkie Prize. So perhaps we'll go with the Kialla hamper first.
Yeah.
It's valued at $80 and there's a nice picture on the website of all the products that are in the hamper, including some organic time. So how many people have we got? I noticed that we had about 100 people registered.
Yeah, I'm just signing in now. I'm going to get that information here shortly.
We'll just keep adding on like that. So the other prize is a Media Junkie has offered the social media rescue course, which I believe she created specifically for you, didn't she, Gillian?
I can bake a cake, but I'm social media challenged.
Well, this course is for people who are social media challenged.
Yes.
And they may be, you know, they may feel that they should be on social media, particularly if you have a small business or you're wanting to start your own little business and you know that social media is a great way to market your business. But it's dizzying and you don't know where to start. So Whisper's the person you need to go to.
Yeah.
And for this reason, she's created her social media rescue course.
I can confirm that we have exactly 100 registered, so that would make it pretty easy to just pick a number between 1 and 100.
There you go.
How lovely.
Okay, so Tanya, would you like to go with the with picking the hamper for us?
Oh, that's nerve-wracking, isn't it? Okay, let's choose number 40.
Okay.
40. Right, a little number.
All right. I have the winner.
Oh,
We have a
okay.
winner. Drum roll.
And the winner is Deborah Curtis.
Oh.
Okay, Deborah, you're with us. Anyway, Deborah, if you're here with us today, you are the lucky winner of the hamper. Excellent. Thank you, and thank you to you, Tanya,
Thanks
for
for
that.
joining in.
And Whisper, would you like to give us just a quick summary on the social media rescue course and what it is?
Sure. You know, some of the feedback that I've received from small business owners specifically that are ethical and doing the right thing. They face particular challenges, and one of them that they face is being able to get their product or service made visible online to their target audience. And as a green and ethical community in Australia, there's actually not a lot of places or groups that you can put your products and services in front of to target your market audience. So this course is designed to help meet the needs of small business owners who may be strapped for cash. You can't really hire somebody to come in and do your social media for you in-house. And you're busy doing what you do with your core business, so you don't have time, you know, to be on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn all day. So this course really provides you with some of the best tips and most effective strategies that don't take up a lot of time but yield really good results. And we actually create a strategy. That's one of the biggest issues I see with small business owners is they start up a Facebook page or a Twitter account, but they don't have a strategy. So within a month later, you know, they're like, this isn't working. And they really lose out on an opportunity to grow their business that way. So we'll set up a strategy first, and then we'll I'll show you some tips and tricks. We'll use some technology. Some of it's free. Most of it's free. And then there's an option after the course for me to continue following up with you each month. And that's also important that you stay motivated. You might have some questions as you try to implement your social media strategy, as we can only cover so much in that first course. So it's a really cost-effective way for anybody to get into social media, specifically the businesses I'm passionate about.
Excellent. Okay, so how about we get Sam to pick a number between 1 and 100 for that lucky recipient?
Let's go 77.
Oh, should I do the drum roll effect?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay, about the cake in the oven.
Yes, how's the cake going?
Yeah,
how should people's cake be going?
I don't know how long it's been because I've been too busy talking, but just with cakes, you know, just...
You do it by instinct, don't you?
I use my nose a lot. I always say to people that come to baking table, if you're starting to smell your cake cooking, if you're starting to smell it's not ready yet. But it's when it suddenly fills the room.
Oh, wow.
When it suddenly fills the room. But there's then it's usually just about ready. But people have all sorts of lore about fruit cakes, and Tanya, you might have some too, that, people say they crackle, they squeak, they talk to you, fruit cakes.
Right. So you open the oven and listen.
Tanya, do your fruit cakes talk to you?
Oh, I don't know, but I certainly always know when they're done because I can smell them. It's usually I would take a cake out of the oven before the alarm goes off, and as I'm opening the oven, usually the alarm will go, the bell will go off, and I think, oh yeah, okay, that was right. But yes, I don't know if they squeal or squeak. I'm not sure about that.
Have you listened to the cake?
Well, apparently they squeak and crackle. But anyway, I go by smell. Okay. And one of the things is with recipes, quite often when you're following perhaps a recipe from another country or whatever, some of the timing, it might not be, and I know people that often when they make it said, an hour and a half, and so I have to take it out. But they're thinking, this doesn't look ready, but it said take it out. So one of the things is about baking is that,
you make your own decision.
Using that as a guide, and things like the type of thing the container that you're baking your cake in will affect how long it takes. Whether you're using metal, whether you're using glass, whether you're using dark metal, and so on. So it can vary the time slightly. So I would say, use that as a guide, But if you can't sort of smell it, fruit cake, you know, where everyone almost down the streets going, oh, she's baking Christmas cake, then it's not really quite ready.
Yeah, okay. And we're not smelling it yet.
No. But because it's the nature of that particular cake and because it's on that sort of temperature, you can open the oven and have a little look. Don't open it right up.
Heat out.
Yeah, only because you lose some of that yield and it's got to come back again. But you will we will talk about what it looks like or how it should feel when it's ready, because that's often what people are not quite sure of. Sometimes you'll stick a skewer or something in some cakes, like even when you're making or chocolate, you know, and there's still moisture in there because it's actually from what you put in there, the fruit, not necessarily the batter's not.
Yes, that's right.
So
that's the challenge.
So also, what I always use to a wooden skewer, which I have one here. So I have one wooden, you know, just your little skewer things, which I use to put in, and then I feel it, and I feel the texture of it. If it feels still wet and sticky, you know, like a bit battery, it's not ready. But if you sort of really can't feel much, or there's not much on there, or it's a bit, it feels just like crumbs, it's ready.
Okay.
So that's the way you can use, you know, physically to see it. But use this. This is very, very good. It's a very useful instrument.
Do we have a winner?
We do. Bridget Cummings.
Bridget Cummings.
Bridget.
Okay. Do you know her?
No.
Oh,
I just
Bridget.
I announce people's names.
That's excellent. We have Deborah Curtis and Bridget Cummings.
Thank you.
And thank you for
Joining
joining you, and you'll get an email from us about your prizes. And meanwhile, whisper back to our actual hangout. Who's with us that we can hear?
Right?